I got this feeling inside my bones. It goes electric wavy when I turn it on. Off from my city.
Thank you, everybody. That's funny. The Cubs, there's some Cubs fans in the audience. That's nice. I wasn't going to tell this story, but then I thought he was going to introduce me with this story about when the Cubs won the World Series. You guys, growing up, I grew up in Southwest Michigan, which is much closer to Chicago than it is to Detroit, but mostly it's just a small town with cows and like an old factory that used to be there. And man, growing up, the only thing like you do after school, you come home from school and you turn on the TV, WGN, Harry Carey was there telling me all about the Chicago Cubs. And I grew up a big Cubs fan. And a couple years ago, the Cubs won the World Series. Some of you guys know that. Now, this is a big deal for me. It's a big deal for a lot of people, a whole lot of people, but it was a big deal for me. But the thing was, I was working that night. I was actually working in a place called Pittsburgh, Kansas. Pittsburgh, Kansas. It's like Narnia. That's not a real place, you guys. Pittsburgh, Kansas. Anyway, and my program started at 7 p.m. That was the exact same time that Game 7 of the World Series started. So my concentration level at that particular program was not, the best it's ever been. But I did make a friend. I made a friend backstage with the guy who runs the theater. It was a theater like this, just a gorgeous space, just like this, a theater just like this. And the guy, I told the guy, I was like, hey, I'm probably going to set my phone on the podium while I talk and stream the game while I'm talking. And he laughed, and then he looked at me and he was like, I can do better than that. I was like, what do you mean? He's like, give me a second. And he goes in the back and he pulls out one of these things. This is called a confidence monitor. It's got my slides showing back at me. But this night, it did not have the slides showing back at me. This thing was a 40-inch monitor showing the game, a live feed of the game. It was fantastic. But that's not even where the story goes. So as soon as the game's over, as soon as my speech is over, I did the fastest talk I'd ever given in my life that night. As soon as that speech was over, I raced out of there. Didn't talk to a single human being. I just got in my car and I drove until I found the first sports bar I could find. It was a Buffalo Wild Wings in Pittsburgh, Kansas. Hot, hopping place this night. I walk in and there are 3 other human beings in this restaurant. 3 other human beings. There's a guy over here, he's watching the game, he's eating some chicken wings or whatever, doing his thing. And then there are 2 local guys, like townies, right? Like local guys, rough guys, just got off a site, right? They're there, and they'd been, I don't know if they're kids in the audience, but they had really enjoyed themselves already up to that point that night, right? So they're rowdy, they're loud, they're talking, and I just sit down, and I'm dressed like this, right? I show up in this little town bar, and I'm watching the game. I'm just focused on the game. Well, this game goes into extra innings, and throughout the night, finally these guys, toward the end of the game, these guys turn over to me, and they're like, hey, you like baseball? And I was like, yeah, I like baseball, man. I'm watching this game. Don't bother me. And then they're like, hey, we're having fun too. What's your name? And so I started talking to these guys, real nice guys, right? Super nice guys, but at this point in the night, they are just hammered, right? They're just blitzed. And they're just getting rowdy and shouting, and there are literally 4 human beings in the entire restaurant. These guys are going nuts about nothing. They're not even paying attention to the game. I'm trying to focus on the game, right? But by the time this game goes into extra innings, one of the most epic baseball games in baseball history, and by the time the Cubs win, you guys, the Cubs won the World Series that night. By the time the Cubs won the World Series that night, those 3 other men in that bar, oh my God. I was locked in the tightest embrace of my life. Oh, tears flowing. They were crying too. They didn't know why. They were just really drunk at that point. Oh, I really wasn't going to tell that story until I had this realization that story is like this little moment, this little example of what I want to talk about tonight. These little moments where, our life is made colorful by the people we put in it. And so often we don't allow that color to come in because we're so focused on watching the game or whatever it is that's on our to-do list that night, right? But that night, those guys, Steve and Larry, I don't really know what their names were, but I took a picture with them. It's on social media someplace. I took a selfie with them, loving on them, tears flowing down my face. Those guys made my night that night. It was going to be a great night anyway, but I will never forget them. I will never forget that bizarre hug that I exchanged. I will never forget it. And there are moments throughout our life that we will never forget. And they all have people in them. And we forget that sometimes. Okay, now I'll go back to how I was supposed to start. I want to be a preacher. I do. It's always been a secret dream of mine, deep down in my heart, to be a preacher. I don't know why. Maybe it's a higher power flowing through me saying I got some message to share with the world. Or maybe, just maybe, I really like it when an audience responds to me. And in church, sometimes they say, amen. That's right. Now, I'm not going to preach tonight, but I do want to offer, I want to help you see the light about a concept called social excellence. Now, this word amen actually doesn't have a whole lot of religious meaning to it. We've given it a lot of religious meaning, but at its core, it doesn't really mean anything religious. It's just an old Hebrew word that means so be it. Like a way to say, I hope that thing comes true, right? A wish into the world to make it true. So, right now, I'm going to say some things. I'm going to say some things out loud. I'm going to say some phrases. And if you like what I say, here's what I want you to do. I want you to say back to me, so be it. Everybody understand? Let's practice. Let's practice real quick. All you got to do is say, so be it, real loud on the count of 3. So pretend I just said something that you're like, wow, that guy just said something great. Just pretend, right? You don't have to, it doesn't have to be real. Just pretend that, and on the count of 3, I want you to say, so be it, back to me. Everybody ready? 1, 2, 3. Oh, good. Say it louder this time, though. Ready? 1, 2, 3. The world would be better if we were all a little nicer to each other, especially on social media. The world would be better if everyone did the little things: smile, hold open doors, say please and thank you, listen more than they talk, and care a little more about others than they do about themselves. The world would be better if people eagerly engaged in meaningful dialogue with each other about the big, difficult, important stuff of life. The world would be better if there were fewer strangers, more handshakes, fewer enemies, and better conversations. The world would be better if we could convince other people, all people, that they are born magnificent, that they are worthy of love, and that they have the potential to change the world. Yes, so be it. So be it. The world would be better if, that phrase, that little set of words is a powerful set of words. I love that little phrase. The world would be better if. The world would be better if. That phrase, when spoken throughout history, when spoken among small groups of thoughtful, committed citizens, has changed the world. Because that phrase, the world would be better if, when a handful of people get together and they start a conversation with the world would be better if, you know what has the potential to happen? That little phrase can turn into an idea, can manifest itself into a project, can transform into a movement, and that movement can change the world. All the great movements, all the great uprisings, all the great rebellions, all the great revolutions of our history all started with a couple of regular people like you and me having a regular conversation like you have all the time. It started with the phrase, the world would be better if. And don't you think we should have that conversation more often? Don't you think that should be more a part of our everyday dialogue? I do. I get inspired by that idea of people coming together, small groups of people coming together. Margaret Mead once said, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has, she said. When people come together, change can happen. When we gather, we matter. But we don't gather as much as we used to anymore. Social scientists are writing books and articles constantly right now, releasing them into the world, decrying the downfall of our very civilization. Because we're not gathering together as people anymore. We're becoming more isolated, more alone. Civic societies are dying all throughout our country, throughout our towns and cities. Associations are becoming online transactions. Congregations are shrinking coast to coast. Government is entirely untrustable for many people. Workplaces lack relationships. They're soulless. And social media, the only place where we seem to be actually gathering, just fuels our insecurities and brings out some of our darkest demons. We don't gather anymore like we used to. I'm on a mission to spread human connection. That's my goal. That's what we do at the Social Excellence Project. That's become my life's purpose. I'm on a mission to spread human connection. I want to help us gather together again. But gathering doesn't just magically happen. It starts with understanding one of the reasons why we gather, because all of us just want to be loved, and we just want to matter. Look around. Take a moment to just swivel your head around. Look at some strangers you haven't made eye contact with yet. Don't worry, I'm not going to make you talk to them. But I want you to look at all those people, and I want you to realize that every single one of them just wants something so simple. They just want to be loved, and they just want to matter. Every person who you interact with, every person who cuts you off in traffic, every person who you send an email to, a passive-aggressive, angry email to, every person you encounter in your workplace, every family member, every person in your community, they all just want to be loved and they all just want to matter. And groups do that really well, but we're becoming more isolated, more alone, more lonely. We've got to get better at the things, the little things. We've got to return to the little things that help us feel connected. And it starts with one simple thing: handshakes. See, here's what I think. I think handshakes are powerful things. I think handshakes have the potential to change the world. I think handshakes might be the cure for the ills of society. Handshakes, if we could just do these just a little more and just a little better. See, because handshakes, if you do them often enough, handshakes lead to conversations, right? Conversations, if you do those well, often lead to relationships. You know you're in a relationship of some sort when you just care about each other, even just a little bit. Handshakes lead to conversations. Conversations lead to relationships. Relationships often result in collaboration. Collaboration is that moment when you and a friend are talking about something and you're like, man, see that thing out in the world? I don't like that thing. And you're starting to complain. But then your friend is like, oh, I don't like that thing either. And we're like, hey, let's go do something about it. And so we do, right? We go out and start doing something about it. The two of us, we go out and start doing something about it. But after a while, we realize, boy, this would be easier if we had help. So what do we do next? We turn around. We shake more hands. We have more conversations. We build more relationships. We bring people in. And this is what we call an organization. See, handshakes lead to conversations. Conversations lead to relationships. Relationships lead to collaboration. Collaboration leads to organizations. And organizations are the only thing that has ever changed the world. And that's why I think handshakes matter so much and why we don't do them nearly enough. There are too many strangers in our world. Too many strangers in our world. Too many people who we have not shaken hands with. Too many people out there, too many unrealized handshakes. And all it takes is a choice to engage. I want you to think about, I got to speak with a lot of you earlier, some of the people in the audience tonight. I got to talk to you earlier, and for the rest of you who I didn't, I'll just tell you what I do. Sometimes when I give a speech to an audience, I'll make them talk to strangers, right? I promised you I wasn't going to make you talk to strangers, so I'm not going to do that tonight. But most of the time, I make people talk to strangers. And then after they talk to strangers, I ask them to put up their hand, close their eyes, and stick out their thumb. And then I tell them to rate the quality of that little interaction, rate the quality of their conversation using their thumb as a thumb scale, right? I always tell them if your thumb is straight up in the air, it was like the greatest conversation of your life. You probably kissed on the mouth at the end. That's great. It got weird earlier. No, I'm just kidding. And then I always say if your thumb is straight down toward the ground, one of you probably got injured during the course of the exercise. And this seems like a silly little icebreaker, right? But see, for me, this matters. This little thumb scale matters. I want you to think about the last conversation you had today. It was probably with somebody sitting right next to you, and it was probably on the way in here, right? I want you to think about that interaction. How would you rate it? Was it a conversation that you'll remember? Was it a conversation that was painful? Or was it more likely somewhere right in the middle? And how many of our conversations over the course of a day, how many of our little moments of human interaction over the course of any given day are somewhere right in the middle? And we wonder why we're so unfulfilled, and we wonder why we're always searching, and we wonder why we always feel like we're not quite getting there. I think this is all there is. I think if you want to figure out a way to matter to the world, if you want to figure out a way to find fulfillment in your life, if you want to figure out a way to take your life to the next level, it might be as simple as this. The next time you're in one of these little spaces, the space between you and another human being, maybe fill that space with something that feels like a thumbs up interaction. Maybe that's all it takes. See, because the quality of your day is determined by the quality of these little momentary interactions. If you have a day that feels like, if you have a day full of interactions you'd rate like this, you probably had a day that felt like this, right? You have a day full of interactions that felt like this, you had a day that felt like this. You have a day full of interactions of any sort, and even one of them felt like this, you probably had a day that felt like this, right? These little interactions add up. And they add up throughout your life. I think about those guys in the bar, right? Those guys in the bar, I think about that night. That became this interaction I will never forget. And the only reason was because they decided to break down the barrier between us. They decided to make it a we situation, not just an I situation. What a gift they gave me that night. They allowed me to be human with them. I wasn't just a TV viewer, I was a part of something human. So this is what I get the pleasure, the honor of traveling around the country and teaching, this idea of social excellence. Let me define it for you. I just want you to sit back and soak in this definition. You don't have to memorize it. But this is what we think of when we think of what does it take to create a thumbs up interaction? What does it look like to be excellent socially? Social excellence is a state of perpetual generosity, curiosity, positivity, and openness to limitless possibility. Social excellence is about waking up in the morning with a desire to intentionally connect with others because you recognize that you will matter to the world, to the people in your life, and through the people in your life. Social excellence is about having the ability to engage in deep, meaningful conversations, not the surface level nonsense that most of us spend way too much of our life in. Social excellence is about acting in a responsible and respectable manner with high expectations of others, being authentic and living every day with integrity is the best version of you. Being confident and vulnerable, being fun and compassionate, being open, kind, and bold, the deepest level of societal participation and contribution. I love this definition, but there's too many words. It's too difficult. So I like to just break it down a little bit. I like to give a simple visual to offer to you to take out into your life to find a way to apply. The question becomes, what will you do to bring people closer to you? There are a lot of strangers out there right now, right? When you walk out these doors, there will be nothing but strangers around you, strangers all around you, strangers all around you. And the question will be, will you make these three choices? The first choice is to engage. The moment we choose to engage, the moment we reach out a hand, the moment we offer a warm smile, the moment we make eye contact, the moment we make a comment about the weather, is the moment we let somebody into our life. Think about that. Most people live entirely outside of your life. They're all outside of your life until the moment you invite them in. And even just a little bit, they walk in, but can you bring them closer? Be the person who engages with the people on the sidewalk of your life. They are waiting to be noticed, wanting to be noticed, and wishing to be noticed, and you were once them. Will you make the second choice? Choose to care. Be the person who goes beyond the expected conversations about the weather, the sports, the traffic, the whatever. Care. Care intensely about each conversation you have. Wow, that little space, the way you fill this space right here, the space between you and another human being is everything. The more you lean in, the more you listen, the more you care, changes everything. It changes your life and theirs, and it changes your potential to lead them, to be led by them, to learn from them, to teach them, to influence them, to be influenced by them. It's all about the level to which you choose to lean in and care. Through these choices, we're bringing people closer to us. What if we make the third choice? It's the scariest of all of them. Choose vulnerability. Be the person who builds bridges, not walls, between you and the people in your life. Connect your authentic self with the authentic selves of others by letting out who you truly are. We all just want to be loved, and we all just want to matter. Love requires vulnerability. Love requires us to take bricks off of our wall. And as soon as we do, other people will take bricks off of theirs. These three choices, these three simple choices bring people to you. You become the gatherer. These are my two little girls. I love them very much. And every time I talk about this message, I think about them very, very, very much. They're the center of why I teach this message, because I know that the choices that I make with them to begin with, if I choose to engage and care and be vulnerable with them on a daily basis, I have to choose that on a daily basis. Does anybody else feel this? Maybe with your kids, your family members? I don't know, for me it's around the kitchen. It's in the kitchen in the evening. Here's what my kitchen looks like in the evening. We've got a big counter, and my wife and I are cooking together, and the kids are on the other side of the counter doing their homework or talking or whatever. And here's my phone sitting right there on the counter. And my kids all they want is my attention. All they want is that's the only thing they want in the world. All they want is to be heard, to be seen, to be noticed, to be a part of that conversation right there. But where's my attention? Far too often. Where's my attention? It's right there. Scrolling. Seeing if I'm loved or not. And they're over there just begging. They're loving me, like right in front of me, loving me. They're pushing my like button, right? They're pushing the little heart of the Instagram of our life. And they are loving me, and and I'm just here looking at other people's pictures. We got to make these choices, right? I think these three choices, choose to engage, choose to care, choose to be vulnerable, add up to who you are as a person. They add up to who I am as a dad, who I am as a husband, who I am as a leader. I think they add up to who we are as a society, as a community. And our community is based on the choices that we make every day. Be the person who chooses to engage. Be the person who gathers people together. Be the person who gives you and everybody you encounter a chance to change the world. Thank you very much.